The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts. The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Hello and welcome back to the show. So in a world where burnout is becoming all too common, how can we rediscover joy and purpose in our work? That's what we're looking into today, and we're going to dive into that with our guest. I'm Steven Skash here again with Mike Lusky. Mike, introduce our guest today.
Awesome. Thanks, Steven. And to our friends, that follow us on the podcast, welcome to another enlightening episode of the Bliss Business Podcast. You're in for a real treat today. Today, we're going to delve into the transformative power of mindfulness and purpose. And we're both in the workplace, right? With our guest. And he's got just a remarkable journey from humble beginnings in rural Louisiana to becoming a successful entrepreneur and an inspirational leader. Beyond that, he's a cancer survivor. He's also the founder of the Improver Group, which is dedicated to enriching the lives of leaders, entrepreneurs, and their teams with the essence to try to really thrive both personally and professionally. And I think, as you find out, his story, which you're truly going to enjoy, is a testament to, number one, I think his resilience, his faith, and his purpose. And so he brings really a wealth of knowledge on the topic of mindfulness and enhancing that in the workplace with the dynamics in the workplace, how to foster a strong culture of empathy and productivity, and then really kind of at the end, to turn those challenges into opportunity. And so as the audience, you're always, interested, what am I going to get from this episode? So you'll discover a few tips on integrating mindfulness into your daily routine with your team, how vision and purpose can transform that journey. So with that, let's welcome Justin Winstead to the Bliss Business Podcast. Welcome, Justin.
Hey, man. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and serve your audience through this incredible medium of live podcasting. I mean, man, this is awesome. I will say, though, I like to try to exceed expectations, and you raised them a little high, so I got to work really hard today. I like to lower them. It makes them easier to exceed.
We're in trouble.
Rock star. It's all right. Hey, Justin, can you share your personal journey and kind of what inspired you on the path you're on now?
Yeah, so the quick highlight of my life is I was raised in Northeast Louisiana, like you said, a little small town outside of Monroe. If you guys are familiar with the Duck Dynasty, guys, I'm kind of from that area. I'm just a cleaner shaven version, one of them. So this accent is what happens when you mix Louisiana country boy, Cajun boy with Texas twang. This is what comes out. So, but was raised out there. My dad was a high school dropout. My mom was a public school teacher, and I had siblings, and we just kind of struggled a lot in life. Money was hard to come by. There was the haves and the have-nots in the world, and I felt like we were on the have-nots side. I can remember looking through the floor of our trailer house and seeing the ground underneath because we didn't have solid flooring. And when it would rain, we'd get buckets and bowls to catch the drops so that the house wouldn't flood. And yeah, just kind of growing up, relationships were big. Family was big. We loved to get together and eat and visit, a lot of front porch and back porch sitting. Somewhere along the way, I developed this idea that money is bad, rich people are evil, and if you were successful in business, you cheated your way to get there. And that was a part of my paradigm and philosophy on life. And I got really involved in our church probably around the same time, and they weren't the ones who kind of planted that idea. But I ended up going into the ministry because I thought, well, I love people. I love serving and working hard. It was a part of my upbringing. And so I went into Christian ministry, and that really kind of exacerbated that mindset of the money is bad, because so much of that is like, if you are sweating through life and it's painful and toiling, then that's a badge of honor. But one of the things that began to dawn on me over time, spent about 10 years doing youth ministry, church planting, pastoral work, was this idea that where there is no margin, there is no ministry, there is no mission, there is no way to serve people and help people without margin. And I began to get interested in this idea of creating margin in my life with my money, with my time, with my energy and focus. And I went into the business world, and there's a lot of roads that I traveled through that with real estate and some oil and gas. Of course, everybody's got to jump into a multi-level marketing plan at some point. I did one of those. But the where I really found my spot was building a property and casualty insurance agency. And part of the way I built that was using the skills that had helped me be successful in ministry, of teaching, of facilitating group discussion, of mentoring. And I built my agency that way from a marketing standpoint. That was the way I served my referral partners. And over time, I just began to realize that actually it's that teaching, that serving, that counseling and guiding that I enjoy the most. And so now where I'm at with the Improver Group is I've smashed these two things together. You know, how do you think about life in a big way and think about causes and people and others that are bigger than yourself? How do you operate with integrity and still try to have morals and love in your living? But then how do you do it in a productive way that allows you to perform better and create those margins that we need in order to survive and thrive in life and business? So that's what I'm about.
I like when we have people who don't have sort of just a traditional, going to business school approach, because it's just, this whole cookie cutter approach to everything. And we've got so many problems in the world, and they don't seem to be addressed, when you're just following that same path. And it's people with different, diverse backgrounds that come together and help solve some of these problems. And so one of the issues I want to talk about is burnout and how that relates to purpose and finding your purpose. And so in 2019, like the World Health Organization, they recognized burnout as a mental health issue impacting the workplace. And they mentioned mindfulness and meditation as important. And that's huge, but they don't really talk about purpose. And I think that often gets overlooked when we talk about mental health. I've had friends, and you probably as well, who say they're burnt out, at work, and they really want to find the purpose in what they do, and they don't know where to start. Where can you give them some advice on where they should start and how people can discover that sense of purpose in their work, especially if they're feeling, disconnected or unfulfilled in their current roles?
Yeah, well, a lot of people feel burnout not because they're doing too much. And there are some people who are doing too much in our culture and society, but a lot of people feel burnout because they're doing too little of what actually sparks excitement and life in them. They're doing too much of the wrong things, not just too much. And so I think one of the places that you want to start if you are endeavoring to discover your purpose is, what really sparks a light in me? What do I get excited about? What am I passionate about? What makes me angry? Who are the people I feel burdened about? But think about where those passions are in terms of your task and your abilities, but also in terms of need. When I walk people through purpose, I really have a Venn diagram that I use. And one of the circles is passions and proficiencies. And so I usually start with that circle and say, hey, first, what are you excited about and what are you good at? And some people feel like that is your purpose. If you get something you're passionate about and you're good at, then that's all you really need to worry about. But I overlap that with people and places. So we'll kind of walk through, well, who are the people that you care most about? What do they look like? What are their hobbies? And you begin to think, is there somebody that you have a special affinity for as far as a demographic or an avatar? And then where are the places, like the locations, but also where do they live, learn, work, and play? So we'll walk through that exercise. And then we get into the pressures and problems. Which ones are the ones you faced and which ones are the ones that they may be facing, and where all those begin to overlap, where, man, these are my passions and proficiencies, the people and places, the pressures and problems. That tends to be where our purpose is usually found.
I like that visual of all those, like the Venn diagram there. I think that could be really, really helpful.
Yeah, exactly. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. One thing too that we just want to let the audience know. So We are live today. So if you have an opportunity or if you have a question for Justin, please submit it in, and then we'll be able to, bring that up during the time that we're here. So thank you very much for joining us today and for watching. So Justin, maybe bringing that thought of purpose into the workplace, but still maybe personalizing it just to, maybe let it was maybe a few weeks back or a few months back now that here at Zero Company, we went through kind of an exercise of really defining our purpose. And then with the whole team, so all of our employees participated in kind of opening up through discussions on, what their values were. And what was kind of neat about that, right, is we were able to start to see places of alignment. So I'm kind of curious if you can maybe tell the audience, what are some strategies that companies can use to align, their purpose as an organization with perhaps an employee's or an individual's purpose?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And it is something that this is where I love the coaching part that sometimes feels really 50,000 foot view and it just feels theoretical, but like, what does it mean to my business and how do I apply some of this? And I feel like one of these areas comes in this idea of creating assessments to evaluate your people to find out what really is driving them, what truly is their proficiency in a certain area, or where are their passions. There's two assessments that I have a special affinity for. One of them is the Working Genius by Pat Lencioni and the Table Group. And one of the reasons I love that assessment is because they distinguish between what is a working genius and what's a working competency. And so a competency is something that you're good at, but it still drains your energy and joy. Whereas your genius is something that you're good at and it gives you energy and joy. It refuels that. And what happens oftentimes in the workplaces is leaders and managers, employers, they put people in positions of their competency. They went to school and got a degree for it. And this is a task they can do well, but yet it's taking the life out of them. And that's why it's so hard right now. People are so discouraged and depressed because they're facing personal challenges and distractions and pressures like never before. Then they come to work and they're good at this task, but they just don't enjoy it. And so finding their genius area and putting them in positions that help with that, I think is incredible and a way to add value. The other one would be the 5 Voices, which is from Giant Worldwide. And that assessment, what it does is say, well, less about the type of work you do and the task, what are the things that you care most about and how do you interpret the world around you? And then more importantly, how do you try to influence others? When you speak up, what is the perspective you're speaking up from? So I'm a big football fan and I always use the analogy that if you want a great team, you've got to have the right people in the right positions, and the Working Genius is helpful for that. But you also need to have the right camaraderie and the right communication and leadership culture. And the 5 Voices helps with that. So regardless, using assessments to create awareness around the tendencies and behaviors of your people can be very helpful. There's dangers in it if you go too far and you try to box people in. But if you use those assessments in a healthy way, they can create awareness, which that's what mindfulness really is creating intentional awareness.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's a really great way of putting it. And I know that the audience is definitely going to appreciate, find a lot of value in those tips. And I have to agree, right? The statistics support what you just said as far as making sure that we have purpose. It leads to higher job satisfaction, right? Higher retention with employees, and everyone is just happier, right? Just around the office and within the team. And that ends up reflecting out to the customers.
Hey, Justin, you touched on this a little bit. How important is leadership in fostering, that culture of purpose, and what qualities do the best leaders exhibit in this area?
Yeah, well, man, I love leadership stuff. So I'm trying to figure out in my brain, how do I narrow this down? And I guess I'll start kind of with the end of your question first, which is we coach people on becoming liberating leaders, because those are the best leaders, those who liberate. And the way we define a liberating leader is one who fights for the highest possible good of those they lead. So a true liberating leader is looking for those they're leading, and they're fighting for their good. Oftentimes leadership becomes this, well, what is the next rung on the ladder for me? And what's maybe the next strategic positioning for our company? But that's not really leadership. Leadership is looking at the people you're called to serve and saying, how can I bring the right amount of support, but also the right amount of challenge? Because we need both of those to advance our good. We need leaders that support us and challenge us. And so the most effective leaders know how to balance that well. I've got a coach, and my coach shared with me this week a website I had not heard of. It was called Photo Feeler. And Photo Feeler is a website you can upload photos to, and people will survey you on the different impressions they get from your picture. So I uploaded some on there. And one of the things that was really enlightening to me was my photos that I came across. They only look at 3 categories. And one of them is competent. One of them is influential. And the ones that, I forget the third category, but the ones that I rated more competent on, I seem to be less warm and influential, which I thought was really, really interesting on there. But the ones where I came across as more personal was less competent. I think that's the challenge leaders face, is we're trying to balance this. You want to be supportive and warm, and you've got to be, soft in relationship in some ways, but then you also have to be hard and driving and numbers, and you got to get stuff done. And so that becomes challenging in leadership. Did that make sense to answer your question?
Yeah. No, and I think too, you talked about coaching. You kind of have that sort of role there where sometimes it feels like you gotta push and you've got to pull and you've got to, but ultimately it's like you're in service, really, right? You're in service, and I like what you said about the kind of the greatest good for the people you serve, which is a more empathetic approach, right? You're thinking not just about yourself and climbing the ladder, but you're thinking about those that you serve.
For sure. Maybe we could stay on this track of leadership a little bit and talk about some common mistakes that happen. So Justin, what would you say maybe are some common mistakes that either people or leaders will make when it comes to defining, their specific purpose and then, living up to that purpose?
I think one of the most common mistakes that leaders make in this context is believing that the way they see their world is the only accurate and true way that the world should be seen. And a truly empathetic leader understands that I don't have all the answers, and I've got blind spots, and I need other people to speak into that. And so I think, and some of it could be a prideful arrogance thing, but it's not always pride or arrogance. Sometimes it's just they're just not aware. The best leaders understand you start with self-awareness, and then you go to self-discipline. You know yourself to lead yourself. And so the most effective leaders create awareness among themselves and others. The least effective ones are naive about what others view. And they feel like, man, we're trucking along, we're winning. There was no disagreement in the meeting, so everything must be fine. And meanwhile, the people who are following with them, they're hurt, they're struggling. I've got a leader that I really respect right now that he actually caused offense to me, and I'm struggling right now with, okay, I need to let him know that this thing really hurt me, because I need to do this for the benefit of others who he might accidentally hurt. And so I've got to have that conversation, but those are hard. And most people who are following somebody they respect will not have that conversation. They're too intimidated. They don't want to rock the boat. 43% of the population in the 5 voices assessment I mentioned earlier are what we call nurturers. And nurturers prioritize above all else relational harmony. They want to not rock the boat. And so most people they have something they want to share with their leader, but their leader's not listening.
Right. Yeah, exactly. What would you say would be a technique to break that barrier down as a nurturer and be able to articulate, whatever the frustration is, and what are some tools perhaps that you've used? Yeah.
So my favorite secret sauce on this is the phrase that I call compassionate curiosity. So with you guys loving empathy so much, you'll love that compassion word. But compassionate curiosity is a way of approaching these tough situations. And instead of being from a position of authority or from strength, regardless of if you're the one leading or you're trying to talk to your leader, you're approaching this from a position, first of all, of love, and you care for the other person and you're fighting for their good and you're looking out for others. That's the compassion, and yourself. You're having compassion on yourself as well, full of compassion, but you're doing it in a curious kind of way. Many years ago, I read 2 books back to back, and I kind of smashed together a formula between these formulas in these 2 books. And the books were Crucial Conversations, and then Never Split the Difference. You guys probably know that one by Chris Voss on negotiation. And the formula that I pulled after smashing those 2 concepts together was open-ended questions with empathy and curiosity in a late night DJ voice. And so if you can, as a technique, if you can get low and slow, and that requires mindfulness, that requires you being aware of your heart rate, being aware of your emotions. But if you can slow that down, maybe try some box breathing. I use a 1-minute pattern is what I typically do. It's 5 seconds in, hold 5 seconds, 5 seconds out. I do that 4 times, and that's a 60-second breathing exercise. So you go low and slow, and then you go in with empathy and curiosity, and you have, what are the questions I need to ask? When most people are going into tough conversations, they're thinking of all the things they want to say. Even marketing, when most people would do a one-to-one marketing to like a direct sales or they're cold calling, they're usually thinking of, what do I want to tell this person? And the real magic is, what do I want to ask? Like, what are the questions? So if you can ask these questions in an empathetic, curious way and keep it low and slow, you're in a good position to be an empathetic, but also a challenging leader.
That's a beautiful thing. I love that, practical advice. And I love the fact that our audience is getting a chance to hear that. I know before the show, we were talking backstage about what could be a home run. And, I think that certainly nailed it for sure. And I'd have to say too, in having practiced some of that, it ends up leading to like lower stress levels, right? There's so much less anxiety in the world and in relationships by, doing what you just said. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I'd love to just underline that phrase, compassionate curiosity. Like, if more of the world could just have that, we'd be so much better off, because it really is a connecting kind of concept, right? You're trying to connect. You're not disconnecting, and we have so much of that going on right now that, yeah, if we just had a little bit more compassionate curiosity in our systems and, with each other, it would make life so much better. I want to switch a little to talking about systems in a way, because we've recently been doing this series on where systems kind of go bad, where scandals happen, things like that, and the worst case scenarios. And how this ties back into purpose is, I see a lot of these systems falling apart because there's a failure of the organization's higher purpose, right? So there's that focus solely on profit, and that easily allows creep into unethical areas for people when you're just solely focused on that. But what can companies and people that have, say, a decent purpose, what can they do so that when things get stretched, maybe it's a hard time, or maybe they're going through growth, how can they prevent that from happening so that good people stay in a good business and it doesn't go sideways?
Yeah, well, you're reminding me of a quote, and I always attribute it to Stephen Covey, but I think it predates him. But the idea is that most people spend their entire lives trying to climb the ladder of success as quickly as they can, only to get to the top and realize it was leaned against the wrong building. And that's for the individual, but that same thing applies to companies and organizations. What most companies and organizations are doing is just trying to climb the ladder as quickly as they can. They're trying to build revenue. They're trying to add team count. They're trying to, add equity, and they're just racing. But then you kind of think about, well, what if we're actually successful at the thing we're trying to be successful at? Is it really success? And oftentimes companies become a victim of their success. I was coaching with an insurance agent the other day, and he's getting ready to add 50 agents to his team. And he hasn't covered some of the more foundational elements of his culture yet. And he said, well, let me get them on, and then we'll come in and work on the team culture. And I thought, well, if you're successful, you're going to become a victim of your success, because you're going to attract in the wrong people. You're going to attract in these headaches that are going to be antithetical to what you're trying to create. So part of it is your why, your vision, your purpose helps you to make sure as a company that you're leaning your ladder against the right building and you're getting to the right destination. And that helps everybody involved. So first of all, you got to have a vision. Second of all, you got to make sure it's the right vision and it's getting you where you want to go. Productivity and systems is being really misunderstood now, because we have this idea that getting more things done is inherently good and noble in and of itself. And true productivity is not doing more things. It's doing more of the right things. It's doing more of the things that matter. And we are in this weird phase right now where tons of people are getting really efficient at doing stuff that really has no effect to the bottom line. One of the things I do when I hire people is I always give them this statement. I say, we don't hire for activity and availability. We're hiring for productivity. Because often companies and the government, not to get political here, but the government can hire for people to just fill a position. And as long as they're available and present and they're moving around papers and doing tasks and showing up for meetings, their job is secure, and that's availability and activity, but that's not productivity. So you got to ask yourself, well, where is the goal line, and are we really marching the ball down the field or not?
Yeah. Sorry, Steve. Let me just jump in, because Justin just totally reminded me of something I was working on earlier today. So, to your point with our agency, ad copy is something that we do. And now with AI, right, you have all these marketers who can just pump out all kinds of ad copy using, the various models that are out there. But, at the end of the day, it's like, if the ad doesn't resonate, if it doesn't create connection, if it doesn't end up in customer loyalty, it's like, who cares, right? Mm-hmm. That you can test a brand new ad every, hour. So yeah, I totally agree with you, right? It's like, okay, let me just do more of this because it's easy versus what's hard.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of the ladder on the wrong building. And I think so much of what we're directed toward in business are these KPIs of just, revenue KPIs. And it's this financial currency. I always say we never look at the currency of love on there in that process. And so it's like, where is real wealth? Is it, building it in the stock market and stuff like that? Or is it making 1 billion people love each other more, right? Where's the real wealth here? And our KPIs for this are just so focused on the revenue side, because, that's what, pays the bills, keeps people employed and all that. But in the process, I think where we see things go wrong is we're just so focused on that, and we don't think about people. We aren't empathetic. We aren't doing it in a loving manner. How can organizations measure these kind of things, these purpose initiatives? Are there any creative or specific metrics or indicators they should look for or try for, or just even have the conversation about it? How do they go about that process?
Yeah, well, I think there's two things that go on with this. One is an internal and one is an external. And I'm going to get kind of, preachy here from a biblical standpoint, go back to my minister days. But one of the things that the scripture teaches, that you take care of yourself and your own family first, and then you try to go out into the community and into the church. And it says a disqualifier for a pastor is someone who can't manage his own household. And so flip over to the company organization context now. I think one of the things that happens is these companies will subscribe to these incredible purposes that are supposedly going to change the world. They're very external focused, but yet they're not being mindful internally of their own health and in the health of their people. And so their own team members are showing up and they're discouraged and distracted and they're feeling stressed out and overloaded. And yet the leadership is telling them, hey, let's go out and make our communities better. Let's fuel this, passion project that we have. And so one thing is I think leaders have to look within their company and say, are we adequately caring for those directly under our umbrella first before they go external? So one of the tools that we use to measure that is something called the Peace Index. And so we coach people on the Peace Index because if you can help your team members have more peace internally, regardless of what's going on with the competition or with the market or with politics or with culture, if they can have more internal peace, they can withstand that. And so we help people internally to give more peace to their team members through coaching. There was actually a study that was done. A company a while back decided to eliminate some of their middle management and replace them with highly effective life coaches. And they saw an increase in overall, not only performance in the company, but satisfaction and peace, because they found out a lot of times these middle managers are just kind of beating around the edges and they're just shuffling stuff. And what they really should be doing is figuring out, how do I help improve the life of these team members? Because most people aren't looking for better jobs. They're looking for a better life. And if their job helps them have a better life, then they are going to be extremely loyal and present and productive with their work.
Yeah, Jess, I'm glad you brought up the Peace Index. I actually meant to ask you about that. So for our listeners, I guess maybe share with them where they can find that or how they could use it.
Yeah, so you can do this assessment for free at my website at improvergroup.com. You can also do that 5 Voices assessment I mentioned earlier for free as well. And the cool thing about the Peace Index assessment is you can take that more than one time as time goes on, so you can see what your results are. Are you increasing in peace, or are you stagnant, or are you losing peace in life? But the Peace Index is really made up of 5 core areas. And one of them we've been talking about a lot today, which is purpose. And so we look at purpose as being one of the drivers of your peace. We look at the people in your life. How healthy are the relationships? And that's why it's important for us to get coaching and to read books on communication and to try to be aware, because relationships and people have a large bearing on our peace. The place. Your environment that you create, are you creating one that's exciting and or comforting? Are you creating one that, what is it that you really need in your environments? And some people don't have any place of solitude they can go and ever just slow the RPMs down and spend time decompressing, and that's causing their anxiety. So having a good place, having a good home, provision. This is one that's on people's mind right now with inflation and with all of the cost of goods. But are your physical needs being met, especially on the financial side? Then you have your actual physical health. And so that's going to have a bearing, of course, on your peace. If you're not healthy, it seems like no matter how good the other areas are, you just don't feel right and you don't feel well internally. So yeah, those are those areas that we look at.
That's perfect. And so that's improvergroup.com then, right?
Yeah, improvergroup.com, and you'll see a tab at the top that says Peace Index, and click it, take it, you get a free account. The only upsell that's in there is there's a $10 a month if you want to get like all of the courses that we attach to that, and if you want to have additional assessments unlocked. But you can just do the Peace Index for free and the 5 Voices for free as well.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah. So we'll have to check that out. Justin, one thing that I think our audience is very keen on, and certainly I think leaders are very keen on as well, is having like a daily routine. We've talked about systems and having like process basically. So I'm kind of curious if you can maybe share any personal practices that maybe you've incorporated in your daily routine to help with mindfulness or to help with purpose that in the end has actually had a real result in your professional life.
Yes, thank you. Well, the book that I have coming out next month, it's also, you can find the information for that on the website. The core of that book is a daily habit to become an improver. By the way, an improver is someone who grows themselves, invests in their own personal growth as a way of making their environments better. They improve their environments because they improve themselves. And the five, we call it the daily high five. These are core habits that improvers do each day. And the first of the daily high five is to show thanks. Now, gratitude we know is important, but this is a little bit deeper than just having gratitude. This is showing it. And so to each day, take time to express your gratitude to someone in a meaningful and thoughtful way is one of the first habits. So I start out every day with an attitude of gratitude. What can I be thankful for? And then I begin to think about who can I send a thank you message to, a note to, a video to, but expressing thanks. The second one is to grow healthy. And so growing healthy involves thinking about what is that next level of my own mental health, physical health, whatever it is I need to do to be a better version of me. And so having some, of course, workout routine, a fitness routine is really helpful. The breathing that we talked about earlier is big. The third habit is to be on purpose. And so we've talked about purpose a lot today. And so being intentional with your day, because part of being on purpose is having your life purpose or your company purpose identified. But part of it's also being intentionally each day within that as well. So purpose is micro and macro. You got to have both of those. You got to be accountable. Enlist accountability in your life, not only for yourself, have things that you can look at that measure if you're on the right path or not, but also have others in your life. And then the other one is to look to serve others. How can you truly serve people? Is that by partnering with them, mentoring them, giving them advice, being a friend, or just giving? There's lots of ways we can serve. And to do those 5 things each day, you will be better, and the people in the environment around you will be better as well.
That's beautiful. Right? Hopefully we can incorporate at least a couple of those.
There you go.
Yeah.
You know, we talk a lot about consciousness on this podcast and kind of where it's going. You know, it's evolving, and we see like older generations in the workplace, they kind of start to focus more on meaning in what they do. But now we've got like the younger generation that actually is coming online with that really early in their process of their careers. So I think everything we're talking about as part of people's business is really just inevitable. Like it's just going to be the inevitable future, right? What's your vision of the future in the workplace in terms of all this? What role do you see the Improver Group, you know, and playing in that, and others like that?
Well, I see there be an incredible opportunity in the future for us to be more human. So some people are really anxious about, man, humanity, we're just racing towards our own extinction and the robots are going to take us over. And I think the exact opposite. I have incredible hope for the future that I think we're going to be able to automate a lot of the tasks that have required people to do, and that we will find the balance that allows us to have more opportunity to connect with one another. When you really think about what it means to be a human, a lot of that has to do with relationship. And AI will never replace true human connection. AI will never replace true human relationship. Even if I get a robot that looks like a person and that has all of the attributes I think would be awesome in a buddy, if I take them to the baseball game and we give each other a high five after a home run, it just doesn't feel the same. We know it's not a person on there. And so I see the future having a lot of opportunity for us to relationally connect with each other. And I think that's what these younger generations are experiencing. They're experiencing loneliness that's been created by isolation, by trying to live their experience online. And so they're desiring connection with other people. And so where I see Improver helping with this is it's coaching people along. How do you truly get rid of the distractions and discouragements and the friction and noise that gets in the way of truly having relationship? We want you to be more productive, not because we want your numbers to be bigger. We want you to be more productive so you have more margin in life so that you can connect with your fellow man. So that's where we're headed. That's how we want to serve companies, is bring the humanity back into the companies and have that empathy, that curiosity, care for your people.
Yeah, I think that's totally on point. You know, I know there are boardrooms out there that just have people solely focus on these, you know, profit numbers, and very stone cold, assessors, and this is what we need to do, and how can we grow the numbers? And that's the focus, meeting after meeting. But so what do you say to those who believe that love and compassion doesn't have a place in the business world?
Man, that concept feels so foreign to me. It's hard to even relate to why somebody would believe that or feel that. But to me, nothing is more important than serving one another. It's really what our country was built on. I mean, the idea that we were accountable to a creator and had compassion for our fellow man and the greater good, those were foundational principles that we were built on. And I think part of the reason we're unraveling in some areas of our culture is that we've abandoned that idea of having a greater purpose and a greater accountability to something bigger than us. And then we also have been turned selfish. We look inward too much, and so we no longer care about how this affects our fellow man. But you see in healthy organizations that those who prioritize service, they get the win-win. They get the profit and the peace. They get to have income and impact. And so there's a depth of their life and their business that others are just missing out on. And so, you can have success sometimes in other models, but you won't have significance. And at the end of our lives, we all look back and go, you know what? Significance is what I really wanted. I wanted to matter. I wanted to leave a legacy of impact. And you're not going to do that if you just treat people like pawns on a chessboard.
Well said. Where can listeners go to find out more about you and the Improver book, and the Improver Group and your book?
Yeah. So improvergroup.com is our main company website. Improverbook.com will also take you to the book page. Sign up on that so you can get the announcement when it's available for pre-order. That's coming up very soon. I'm getting more and more active on LinkedIn, so that'd probably be the social site that I would love to connect with your audience on. But get that book, Become an Improver. I promise you won't be sorry for that. And, we have our tagline here is good and getting better. And so I encourage you just to hang on to what's good, appreciate it, have gratitude for what's good while you're reaching for what can get better.
Justin, thank you for joining us today. Great conversation. And thank you to our listeners. And as a reminder, on Tuesdays, Tulio, Ash, and I run our regular show. The past few weeks, we've been going into business systems gone wrong. On Wednesdays, it's a short 10-minute episode. Right now, we're running our Empathy Expansion Kit series. And then on Thursdays, we're joined by our special guests. So please join us on the next Bliss Business Podcast.